Ivana is technical director of a very well-known, large and brilliant company that she can tell you about if she wishes to, helping with privacy by design programs, ethical challenges related to AI and blockchain technology. As if that wasn't enough, she was awarded Woman of the Year 2019 in the Cybersecurity Awards, recognition of her growing reputation as an advocate of equality, privacy, and ethics at the heart of tech and AI, things that we are super, super passionate about at MKAI. And as some of you heard me mentioning earlier, she just launched her book, An Artificial Revolution on Power, Politics, and AI, which I will save blushes, Ivana, and I will promote for you, and I will put on the chat and encourage everybody to go and take a look. You've got the Kindle edition. It's really interesting, and I loved her book launch. Such challenging questions. Ivana, I'm so honored that you're here talking for us. Whether or not you'd have driven up to Milton Keynes, we'll never know, but you're on our Zoom. Over to you. Enjoy. Welcome, Ivana Bartoletti.
Thank you so much, and very kind, and really good to be joining you. So I have slides, but I just want to start with a few things, a few thoughts, and because I see it's a very friendly environment, I would really welcome sort of discussion on this, because I'm just going to put forward some thoughts and that are a little bit maturing with me as we go along. So as was mentioned, I work for Deloitte. I'm a technical director there, and I work on privacy and ethics by design. And I've been working in privacy for 20 years now. Started as sort of from a human rights perspective, and then the thinking evolves, you know, and I work in particularly in privacy enhancing technologies. So I just wanted to share a few thoughts about what I think is going to happen and is happening already, and what is probably what we're moving towards in the future. So I think I just wanted to just mention a few things. So first of all, I wanted to just talk about how I think the concept of labor and work is changing with artificial intelligence. And I just wanted to share some thoughts that actually are a little bit more academic and come from my sort of the thinking I've done for the book and the chapter about labor in the book. And they are around the concept of labor has changed in terms of especially because of machine learning, and how it's becoming less a thing of somebody teaching you what you're doing, but we are entering the phase of automation, which somehow extends to labor as well. And the other big change which is happening is also in relation to we used to have intermediaries before the age we're in, and to an extent, you know, the labor market had trade unions, which were the intermediaries between the desires of the owners and workers. And these intermediaries are going, and with automation, with the gig economy, this is happening faster and faster and faster. Over the last few years, we've seen a lot of this happening, and a lot of issues around the gig economy in particular coming to the fore because of some work done by investigative journalism, and because of the courage of some employees themselves, having the courage to really bring all these issues to the public domain. So then the pandemic happened, and the pandemic, to an extent, and the response to it, is building on the digital world and the automation and that we knew before. So we're building on that. So we're building on datafication, we're building on perhaps a little bit more too much techno solutionism, and we're building on a lot of asymmetry in our digital space, which is around the sort of data accumulation and how unequally data is handled right now. So why am I saying all this? Because as we move forward, we are building in our response to COVID-19 on what we've got already. And at the moment, we are in a situation where a lot of organizations are going to probably automate at a speed which we were not aware before. And probably projects of digitization and automation, which they were going to happen in 6-8 months, are probably going to happen in 2 months. If anything, because we worried about a new spike in infections coming in the autumn, and organizations wanted to be more resilient, less dependent on human labor if or should something like this happen again. So this is why I say we are at a watershed for jobs. We're a watershed for jobs because the concept of labor and work is changing, and it's changing in many different reasons, because of the sort of the machine learning, the automation, because of the lack of intermediaries, and because of the if work has been in such a huge part of people's life and people's identity, and this is changing quite rapidly with the age of automation. But at the same time, we're in the middle of a pandemic, and we're building on all that. And at the same time, we're speeding all this up because of wanting to feel more resilient and build resilience within our companies. And I think this is a really important topic, and a topic that requires really an understanding that if we do it quickly, then all the checks and balances that we would normally put into our automation journeys. So, for example, all the checks and balances around the purpose of what we're trying to do, the impact, the consequence scanning. What is the consequence of an automation or an innovation project that you are establishing, or the mitigation risks around bias and unfair outcomes when it comes to artificial intelligence and algorithms, the trade-offs that inevitably need to be navigated for example, around explainability or around accuracy and data management. All these checks and balances that normally companies would stop for a second and say, hold on, hey, I gotta do it properly if I want to automate, and if I want to automate the long term and build the resilience for the long term, as well as not incurring to costly challenges from regulators. All these checks and balances, are they going to be there? Are we going to create a participatory approach to transformation if we're going to speed it up in a way which is less accountable? Are we going to cooperate in a multi-stakeholder approach with workers, with employees, with community as well in our transformation journeys moving forward? And this is why, I think in an emergency like this, which is just to an extent is an emergency with no expiry date, because we don't know what's going to happen in the future. We don't know if there's going to be another spike. We don't know what's going to happen to our economy. I think, when I say we're a watershed moment for jobs, I mean that the speed of automation can be overwhelming. And when I read on Forbes, on the international magazines, that the first concern that companies have right now is how to speed up their automation journeys and how to make it more more efficient to increase their resilience. And of course, when this happens, we've got to think about what about all the sort of checks and balances that need to be put in place? What about the cooperation between the worker and the machine? How is that going to happen? And how are we going to prepare for that? When I work with organizations across the globe in terms of embedding their innovation journeys, to me, the cooperation is more about augmentation than automation. And I enjoy, particularly in areas like the healthcare sector, really working with the employees in terms of saying companies and say, how is this going to augment your ability, capabilities, and asking important questions that are crucial. So, for example, if it's a medical sector, the questions become really important to become like, what's going to happen to medical knowledge in a time where you're going to have machines and algorithms making decisions from precision medicine or treatment for you. How are you going to be able to navigate the concept of explainability in algorithms, for example, where our explainability is such a contextual thing, and explainability for me as a patient would be completely different from explainability from a practitioner perspective. So all these checks and balances, they're so important for consumers, but also so important for employees and for people who are in the jobs and they see their jobs changing. My big question is, will we have the time? Will we have the patience? Will we have the willingness to embed all of this into the transformation journeys moving forward? Or will it be a case of speeding up automation at rocket speed? And this is really important, moving forward. And then, of course, there are all sorts of social implications where, you know, we are already in a situation where 1 out of 6 people under 30, they are unemployed. And this is it's a statistics that came out this morning. And the consequence of the lockdown generation, the younger people between 20 and 30, particularly in the hospitality sector, is huge. And how we're going to get out of it is a huge question mark. And the long-term consequences to deal with all this is really a key thing, as much as, you know, how we're going to make the most of what we've learned over the last few months, in terms of better balance between work and not work, or if some people have experienced more of a balance, some people have experienced much less of a balance. The blurring space between our home and our job and our day life. I mean, these are all considerations that we need to bring into the equation. And it's really important now that without the intermediaries that used to be the trade unions, particularly in larger businesses, how are we going to ensure that, you know, we bring all these considerations and thinking to the public forum? And I always ask, you know, when I work with companies, it's important to moving on that, you know, you are involving the workforce in the discussions. And in fact, for example, in my own company at Deloitte, we've just issued a document around, you know, how you put well-being and health of employees at the front of what you're doing. So, you know, when I say we're a watershed for jobs, I really I'm looking at this with both fear in terms of what's going to happen to the concept of labour, what's going to happen to what gives people identity and the dignity, and what's going to happen to the younger generation, but also how is this automation going to impact that was going to impact before. Because as I said, you know, we're building on what was happening before, but to an extent, you know, the race that we're facing is that this is going to progress at a much higher speed than earlier. And the last thing that I really wanted to mention on this is related to the cooperation with the workforce. And one of the things that I believe are absolutely important at a time we are having a lot of discussions around ethics of artificial intelligence. Ethics of artificial intelligence has become a buzzword, and in my book I actually do a lot of criticism about this debate because it's to an extent also quite limiting. When to consequence scanning impact long-term to innovation and artificial intelligence. And this is particularly important right now in the stage we're in. And this is happening because there is an increase in coming from regulators. The Information Commissioner Office are placing onto decisions, and innovation is increasing, and not just in the UK, but at European and global level. But also because there is an element of trust in companies, and that has become very important to consumers. And a recent report coming from the Center for Data Ethics is basically demonstrating that consumers fear automation when a particular decision, for example, is made by an automated systems, and when that particular decision is influenced by special categories of data, by some particular categories of data. This is particularly relevant, for example, in the insurance sector and the banking sector, as we are seeking to automate a lot of decisions around lending, a lot of decisions around sort of the way that we deal with customers by look at the how we create products that are done in participation with in a multi-stakeholder approach, looking at working together with employees and workers in what we are developing, working together with the wider community and those who are going to be affected the most. And you know, this is important, particularly after this pandemic. About surveillance. When we talk about watershed moment jobs, we also have to think about people returning to work and what kind of workplaces are we going to go back to. At a time where we're discussing whether or not to have a COVID app, and should be launched at the end of June, as part of a much bigger picture, which involves tracing, manual tracing, and also testing. But as we think about to return to work, one important thing that we look at is how to welcome people back, and how are we going to ensure that, despite the emergency, despite the wanted to, of course, protect public health, which is crucial, we still uphold rule of law. And sometimes when I see some of the products that are out there in the market, I do worry a little bit, because it's fine. We want to check people's temperature. We want to have the tools at our disposal that allow us to create safe environments. But it's really important that we do that in a way which protects rights, privacy, because ultimately privacy is the most important asset, not just for the individuals, but for society. So I do want to say, and I say to a lot of organizations, be really careful when people come back to work to ensure that they feel reassured that the data that they're handling is going to be treated in the best possible way. And if you are purchasing or developing products to facilitate and ease that return to work, to make sure that security and privacy and ethics by design is there at the onset, because that's the best way, I think, to build trust and to ensure that employees feel welcome back after this pandemic. That's all for me, but I would love to hear your thoughts.
Ivana, thank you so much. Please do use your reactions down there in the bottom right if you want to just put some thumbs up and applause emojis and so on to just show your appreciation there of Ivana's talk. Ivana, there's a few things coming up in the chat. We've just got about a minute here. So really interesting points and questions about the collaboration between humans and machines on guiding process in companies, about trust. And I suppose the governance I wonder about is do you need people that don't have any skin in the game when it comes to technology to be the leaders around ethics and regulation of advanced technologies? But those people have to fully understand those technologies as well. We don't end up in a paradigm there, do we?
So first of all, I just want to say tech is not just about technology. Yeah. So and I know it might sound really weird, but tech is much more than tech, and especially when it comes to AI. AI is much more than technology, and and it's about power. It's about the ability to transform the world, to automate stereotypes that are in society. So AI in particular, because you work in this area, is much more than technology. And to consider technology as something neutral that is just depends on how you use it is wrong. Technology is not neutral at all. It's whether it makes it has the value parameters, settings, features, and whatever. So because of that, we need an interdisciplinary approach to the deployment of technology. We really do. And I always say, you know, companies that are really good at doing that and they're there for the long term, they are the ones who are able to say, okay, first of all, I'm going to look at the purpose of what I do. I'm going to do a consequence scanning, and I'm not going to do it just, you know, with a group of people in the room, but I'm going to open it up, because the way that some people look at things is very different. And so is that multi-stakeholder, is the sort of participatory approach. That is what is able to really bring, you know, more resilience and long-term impact of what we're trying to develop. So interdisciplinarity, getting people from wider community, I think is really important.
Ivana, thanks again. I couldn't agree more. You'll be back anyway a little bit later on, and we'll have some more Q&A if you don't mind sticking around.